There's no cut, yeah.
How are you, sir? I'm good.
Since we're here at the noon hour, we'll try to be mindful of everybody's time. We call this special meeting of the WASD Board of Order. We have happily also the board members present, so everyone here, thank you for your time. And being mindful of everybody's time, we're going to go into closed session under 551.072 of the Texas Government Code. We're going to hopefully not be in there more than 15, 20 minutes. Take as long as we need, but I know everybody's here, on, as it was short notice, and really time spent on a Monday meeting was necessary. So, with that said, 11:32, we'll go closed session.
sit up here. No. Y'all don't have.
I don't think there's.
official, you know? Now we look all official.
No lane? We don't get a lane.
You gotta provide your own. It's budget cuts, man. Come on. You seen our M&O budget? Have you seen our M&O budget?
Okay, 12:03:04. We are 12:02 on the clock. Back in open session, no action was taken in closed session. We are on our third agenda item, discuss possible bond proposal, and then we've of course got a fourth action for the board to potentially take action on calling a bond election. So, Dr. Allen, are you going to take this up first?
Well, I can. You know, just by way of review, we received a committee recommendation that the board's been looking at for some period of time. That would involve the potential closure of Spiegelville Elementary School and rebuilding a new one on a site up Spiegelville Road that the district currently owns. And then there's money in there that would give us upgrades on deferred maintenance to the tune of about $40 million, $6.7 million to deal with 30 buses and needs the operations department, about $9 million for deferred maintenance and technology. And then there's additional dollars in there to just upgrade the general feel and aesthetic of some of our facilities related to like 25-year-old furniture, upgrading VCT to LVT, some general upgrades to the high school with regard to a PE gym, LED lighting on all of our extracurricular, co-curricular, outdoor spaces, and other connected type projects. And so the board's been studying that for some period of time. And while looking at that, looking at other intersecting factors such as, like since we got the recommendation, we've gained more knowledge, but not absolute clarity on the impact of HB2 on school funding. There's also been continued monitoring of our current enrollment, both the last couple of years as well as where we are today, for example. And so all of this data has been kind of put together and shared with the board and has brought us to this point here where through the entire process, Mr. Berry's sitting here. If I said it once, I said it a million times, that the board has the discretion to accept, reject, or modify a recommendation. And modifications can be specific points within the bond program, timing of the bond program, or how to come at specific projects along the way. And so we're at the point now where the deadline to call for election for it to make November is we have to have that turned in by 5 o'clock this evening. So today's the day.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Fish or
you.
cut bait.
More or less, yes, ma'am.
The one other thing that I wanted to touch on, because I know within the 1,120 whatever pages of board packet we had last week, there was our information, Susan, on where we are on our net taxable value.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, so Wesley.
And then I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, Susan. Wesley, do you mind speaking to that?
Sure, yes, sir. So our net taxable our certified values we received at the end of July, they did come in lower than the previous year by about 4%, largely due to the increased homestead exemption from 100,000 to 140,000 for residential taxpayers.
And Dr. Allen, what's that do to our bonding capacity using our typical assumptions that we've asked our financial consultants to make? So
typical assumptions being $6.5 million currently sitting in our INS fund balance and 0 penny increase to the INS tax rate. $175,200,000 is our total capacity. The bond called for $175,300,000, and so if the bond board were to call for election, we would do some value engineering and we'd find that to bring that under the limit at the 0 tax rate. Unless the board called for 175.2, and then we'd have to start making adjustments to the tax rate. But to keep it at 0 pennies, we'd have to be at 175.2 or less.
The point there, Susan, being there had been some discussion about an anticipation that those values would go up and our bonding capacity would increase, and instead it's stayed flat, gone down.
Wow.
That's important.
So, floor's open for discussion, folks.
Thinking.
So I know that looking at the M&O side and how it interacts with the INS side of this, I know that we've already made some changes on the M&O side in anticipation of some of these funds, right? In terms of how we think about maintenance and technology specifically. So we talked about it Tuesday, but
Yes.
just to make sure, in many cases, we're able to continue to fund those things out of operations if there were to be a bond passed in May and to pay ourselves back from those INS funds. Is that right?
So what we would end up doing, let's say that we did not call for a bond today and delayed and did that in May as a hypothetical scenario, okay? We would fix things as they break. And then of those funds that are eligible to be paid for out of INS funds, there's a legal mechanism by which we can pay ourselves back for that. Yes, sir.
And what's the time limit on that?
It's 18 months-ish. There's pieces that you have to hit within 18 months, and you can go as far as 24 beyond that. So we would be well within time frame on that. Even if we ended up in a November scenario, we'd be fine on that. I mean, it's from the date that you make the purchase.
And I guess that scenario is no different than there are some things that are eligible for that reimbursement, and in the first instance, there's some things we probably couldn't pay with bond funds, even if we already had the bond called and had
Correct.
the money.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
just want to be clear on that. What, Dr. Allen, is, I know you've looked at this some, passage rate, bond elections, Midway particularly, is it critical that we do it in November, critical that we do it in May? Does it make any difference one way or the other?
So in 2008, we had a bond program that passed at 60%, and then in 2013, we had a May bond that passed at 51%. And then in 2019, we had a November that passed at 65%, and then we had a November Vader election that passed at 83%. And so they've ranged between them, like you look at your two Mays, there's a 60 and a 65. And then you look at your two Mays, there's a 60%, and then the 13 bond was 51. That was the Mac and iPads bond program. And then you look at the two Novembers, there's a 65 and an 83. So I wasn't here for all those, but just kind of look at the numbers and having a little knowledge of those. I was here for the 08 one. I think it has as much to do with the package and voter support for what it is that we're presenting them with as it does timing.
Yeah, I would agree. That was my thought. I mean, I know the one-to-one initiative, I know a big reason why that was at that 51%.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was a one-off, I think.
Well, and the Vader was pretty high. And just as a reminder, we increased our M&O tax rate, but we also decreased the INS by an equal amount at the same time that the state did compression. And so in terms of voters understanding the value in that was, I mean, 83, it's like, why was that number so high? I think that there were a lot of factors that went into that made that turn out as well as it did.
It seems to me, and this is the way I've been looking at it for a while, we've gone forward now for give or take over a year in the expectation that we were gonna call for this in November, based on what we knew at that point. Obviously, in the last few months, there've been some things that have happened that make the situation more volatile. There may be more that we know between now and May. But what I'm trying to get clarity on is will the advantage we gain by waiting longer and maybe getting more information outweigh the advantage of going forward with the things that we already have determined that we need, that we could have been spending money on, yesterday? That concerns me a lot. I don't want to lose our position of being strategically, informed and in a better position to make the best decision. But there's a cost to that, and I'm having trouble weighing, what weighs heavier?
Do you want me to speak to that a little bit?
Yes,
I
if you
don't-
have an answer for it.
Well, I don't have an answer for it. I think what I can tell you is this: the things that we are likely to know more about as we move forward is I think there's 2 or 3 things in particular, and one is, so our enrollment will continue to tick up between now and snapshot is what I expect to happen. We're down a little bit this year compared to last, and we were down the previous year as well. Not dramatically, but enough to where I think it's worth paying attention to. I think we'll have a better sense for exactly how those numbers shake out between now and the end of October. And as you know, that affects our M&O funding fairly dramatically. The other thing is we'll have a sense for what our funding in year 2 of the biennium will look like. The wild card in that is the special education funding, and whether or not that change is going to be meaningful or not. I mean, the last conversation I had was basically we were told by the state that they promised us we won't lose money, which is not nearly as optimistic as the way the conversation was being had coming right out of the session. And so
They were running ads about how much new money we're gonna get.
because of the way they're marrying up with the intensity of services model, and I think there's reason to not necessarily count those chickens before they hatch. So I just think that those two things, I think in particular, are things about which we may have more information.
What I would say to you, Pam, that in my mind, not discounting what Dr. Allen has said, not that there aren't other things, but one of the biggest areas that the facility study committee struggled with was, do we spend significant money increasing capacity at pretty much all the campuses across the district other than like Chapel, right? Park Hill, because we just spent money on them. Do we do that, or do we look at building a, quote, new Spiegelville? And one of the biggest concerns that I've got at this point now is what our enrollment was last year, being a decline from the year before, and where we are now, spending money on a new elementary, calling it a bond election that includes a new elementary, which is the facility study committee's recommendation. And I get that, but they also didn't have the benefit of knowing what we know about enrollment now. And I think we already know it's down. I think that waiting till May gives us a chance to see just where it is, and particularly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Allen, where we're down is at elementary.
Yes, sir.
So I don't want to go ask the voters to pass a bond to build a new elementary when our enrollment figures don't support that. Or at least certainly an argument can be made by folks that it doesn't, right?
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges, because it's such a broad bond, I mean, what percentage of that is investment in future growth, and what percentage of that amount is really just handling our day-to-day operational issues? And I present that as a question. If there's, I know it's hard to parse out because there's such a broad number of things in it, but it seems like a significant portion is, even on the elementary side, it's not purely for growth. We've also have a 1950s school that's incredibly inefficient to run.
Right.
So it's a bit of a both and.
I don't disagree with you,
100%.
Rick. I think it is. But the point is the two alternatives that the committee was really focused on in that level were, don't build a brand new elementary, increase capacity by building up those other schools, right?
Right.
So it wasn't that there wasn't gonna be a potential for increased enrollment addressed, but it was gonna be addressed differently, the one versus the other. And I think my view of it is, along with other reasons, but just focusing on that one for a moment, waiting until May, we get the benefit basically of an entire school year of data to look at where we are and make a decision. Okay, do we tell the voters now, yep, we really do want y'all to approve a bond with one of the pieces of it being build a new elementary school? Or do we want to go back and ask them, hey, we don't want to do that yet. There'll be a day and a time where I'm sure some board will be doing that. Instead, we want to shift to that second piece that the committee looked at And it didn't win out as the recommendation, but it was really, really close.
What is the time frame for calling a May bond election? Is it into January? What is the date that has to happen?
So, yeah, end of January, 1st of February, it's like it's the same timeline when we
It's
call
the
board
same-
elections. Yeah,
okay,
so it's right there, end of January, 1st of February.
And I'll stand corrected, not a full year's worth of enrollment data, but by that point,
Oh, yeah.
we already know where we are.
Sure,
right?
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, no.
I wasn't trying to,
No, I
I wasn't
understand
saying
that.
for that
I just
reason.
wanted
I
to
was
be
just trying to
clear.
understand, yeah.
I was not trying to overstate it.
Yeah.
and-
But of the things though in this package that we're looking at, you know, a lot of it addresses future funding issues. What will that do, not getting those things in place now? Now, we did hear we can reimburse ourselves on some stuff later,
Right.
but you would just be attacking it from a broke fix standpoint,
Yes.
not a proactive, let's go get the best deal we can on buses or whatever,
or
or,
roofs or something.
Right.
That's the crisis of the decision that I've been struggling
I-
with, is it,
the
we're gonna pay
operational.
now or we're gonna pay later, and later it's gonna be more expensive. Growth and new elementary discussion aside, these preventative things we've seen for a while we wanna invest in, does that just get more expensive the more we push it down the road? Does that increase, you know, our exposure to cost?
is it gonna make it tougher for us to get back to balanced budgets and not deficit budgets? Yes, it's gotta be the answer, I'm sure, but
The biggest challenge we've got in terms of balanced budgets is getting the M&O piece in line. And that's where I think the hinge point really in this conversation boils down to. And because if the concern is the lack of our ability to balance the budget with us being in a $3 million deficit right now, then the only way to bring relief to that is to either increase our M&O revenue or decrease our M&O expenses, right? And one of the things that committee struggled with is the fact that it's $2,000 more per student at Spookerville than any other campus, just because of
Yeah.
its being small and inefficient. To build a new facility without increasing enrollment does nothing to address that problem.
Yeah.
Now, there are other considerations, and I think that's to your point, it's like, but if we start fixing some of these broken pieces of equipment, we can start to gain back some of those efficiencies sooner. So like if we replace old HVAC with new HVAC, do you get more energy efficiency and this and that and the other? And I'm sure we would benefit from some of that. I don't know how to quantify that. And I don't know how much the delta would be on doing it now versus delaying till May to start doing that work.
Right. And you made a point to, you know, where we are feeling, if the numbers are a little lighter on the elementary side, our secondary side is busting at the seams in areas. That's why some of this project was to expand the building a little bit at the high school.
Yes.
In some very needed ways. All that gets delayed, even
Yes.
though it is an issue now and has been for a while. So we've got several different things
Yeah.
on several different schedules.
Aubrey, if we waited till May, what do you think that does to the timeline for the PE gym at the high school?
I mean, really, it doesn't have to open at the beginning of the school year. Say that project schedule is flexible. I think it's currently pushed out to a 2028 opening, and I think that would still very much be doable.
Okay.
Because if you remember, for the committee's sake, we had everything being completed in 28, knowing that we could move some projects forward.
Right.
Do we need to look at the bond almost in kind of two different buckets? I think the biggest question, at least for me, is whether or not we're going to reopen a new Spiegelville. I mean, to me, that's kind of that's probably the biggest part of this bond, right?
Right.
So for me, the lens in which I've been looking at the bond is, it's what Pete kind of alluded to, is that, you know, we have to relieve some of the M&O pressure. Because like Dr. Allen said, we have to raise revenues or decrease expenses. We can't raise revenues because the state limits us on that. So if we're going to decrease expenses by using some deferred maintenance to hopefully relieve some of that, if we didn't reopen Spiegelville, and there was a cascading effect of this, the 317-ish students at Spiegelville being reallocated amongst different elementary schools, and then I'm sure there'll be, it'll be a daisy chain, I'm sure. It can't all go to Woodway, can't go all to South Bosque. There'd have to be, which in and of itself is some rezoning and is something that nobody really likes. But to offset and relieve that pressure, I mean, if we don't rebuild Spiegelville, I don't know if there's necessarily a huge need to wait to have the bond in May. I mean, we could, for the deferred maintenance and for getting, the gym and all that stuff built, we could do that in November and just not, we decrease the amount of the bond. But it's just sort of, that's the part I'm wrestling with, like Pam's wrestling with a little bit of that. I mean, if we're not reopening Spiegelville, I mean, I could go either way on November or May, but if we don't do Spiegelville, I don't know if it really matters to push it to May as much as it is if we're adding a new Spiegelville school. That's my thought.
It's a really good observation. I think, from my standpoint, and we had talked about this in the last meeting, is there a conversation where it makes sense to do part of this now, to do essentially the deferred maintenance and technology pieces of it now, and then pause on the question of the elementary school until we know more on the enrollment issue. The challenge there obviously is it's a lot harder to do a bond election in November and another one in May, right? So that's obviously the potential downside to that. But I think one of the other advantages that I've had in the back of my mind in this process, and I said something about it I think a month ago, that deferring till May might give us a chance to do, the bond capacity itself is an asset for the district, right? And, there's, obviously we can use it to issue bonds, right? That's what we're talking about right now. But it also gives us the opportunity to do what we did in our last time we went to voters with Vader, which was to look at that and say, hey, it's great that we have that capacity, but man, it would be nice on the M&O side to have more revenue. And there is still another, lever we can pull, even though it's not as palatable, is to say, is there another way to do a Vader swap and use some of that bond capacity to transition it over to M&O as copper pennies. 3 of those is about $1.8 million a year in revenue from the last numbers I think that you guys had said, 1.7, 1.8 million. So it's not inconsequential. And I think if we are going to look at waiting till May, I think I would love to flesh that conversation out a little more and see does it make sense? I mean, I know there's an element where, man, some of that revenue goes to the state and not to us, and we really hate doing that here to our taxpayers locally. But I also know that, I don't want us to get to the point where we look at closing programs and more dramatic budget cut changes and not at least have given the voters a chance to say, hey, before you do that, we think you should do this instead. So I think, to me, that's another advantage of deferring, is to say, can we bring that into the conversation? Is there a way to do something that's a smaller package and get 1 or 2 or 3 cents of a Vader at the same time? So I know we have to do that in November,
yeah, I
right?
was just
Because of
gonna
when the
say,
tax rate happens,
yeah.
I get that. But I think if we have the conversation between now and then, it's at least time to discuss it, because we're not gonna figure that out in the next 3 hours, that piece. So, all that to say, I would be fine with deferring and knowing that we have chance to get some more information and dig a little deeper into some of these questions.
And in that same vein, Colin, I was told that this is not the smart move. I'd be fine with calling the bond for
Yeah.
the part of it, the piece of it, and carving out that other and maybe taking that up in May, or maybe pushing that all the way to, a November of 26. I get it, folks that are a lot more politically astute and bond savvy, smarter than I am, say that, there are concerns with doing that piecemeal. And in an ideal world, though, that's what I would do, right? So we go ahead and address those issues now, but we wait making the call of what do we do to address elementary capacity,
Because
right?
essentially, we've got like you said, two buckets.
Yeah,
And
I
it's-
mean, and I know that doesn't, but we're not gonna fix what it costs to run a very, very outdated Spiegelville Elementary. We're not gonna fix that this year anyway.
Or even next year.
Or even next year,
Right.
right?
And yeah, some things have been said here that I want to make sure they're clear. We're not closing Spiegelville, right?
Not today.
Yes, because that's, some of the things have been said back and
Right.
forth here, that language has been used a bit about closing Spiegelville. I was just thought you could make that very clear that,
Well,
that.
so there is an option that the Facility Study Committee looked at that would close Spiegelville, that would close it
And, yeah,
and redistribute those children between other campuses. And then we would have to, instead of spending money on a new Spiegelville campus, you would take that money and instead add to the capacity at 4 of our other elementaries, right? Now, it's interesting when we use the term closed Spiegelville. Yes, it would be closed and those students would be rezoned for a period of time. If growth were to occur, you're gonna reopen something out there at some point. But what that would do is it would protect our M&O budget from an inefficient campus, from a numbers perspective, until such time that the enrollment growth comes up to a level where it justifies building a new building, in short.
that's
That's more,
not the option we're talking about.
The board can talk about what our option the board
Right.
wants.
It hasn't
that's,
been the
that
one.
was what, he articulated very well what I was getting at, is that if we decide, you know, because that, like we said, that was one of the committee's possible solutions. If we, not today, but at some point in the future, the near future, but not so near future, whatever, if we close Spiegelville and then we operate with 7 elementary schools, and we take the students that would otherwise have been going to Spiegelville and redistribute them to the other 7 campuses in some form or fashion, then we gain a lot of M&O efficiency. And to me, that's the ticking time bomb for us. And based on what it sounds like enrollment's happening at the elementary school level, I don't know if it's imperative that we have a new Spiegelville at this moment. But I do think that if we did this bond and didn't reopen Spiegelville or build a new Spiegelville in its place and we redistributed the students, we could push that aspect of the bond, the new elementary school, to, you know, a couple years down the road. So you're not doing one in May or one in November and one in May, or one in May and one in November, one right after another for a new elementary school, because it doesn't sound like we necessarily need it at this point. So we could be, to Colin's point, a little bit more judicious with our bond capacity and not just throw a new elementary school out there when maybe we don't really need it.
The only thing I want to be clear on is if we did not build a replacement for Spiegelville, we would have to spend
Yeah, right.
funds increasing capacity of the others. So we would still spend
It's
probably
not,
somewhere in the neighborhood
it's
of
not the same, but it's
175
close.
million.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
not
it
the
was-
same,
I
but
thought
it's
it was like
close.
less. If it's not,
It's
then-
maybe
It's less.
9 or 10 million less.
$10 million difference is
it
what you're
10?
talking
Okay.
about.
Yeah.
I thought it was more like 20. I was misremembering.
So if you took those two pieces, that you would take Spiegelville, obviously out of the new elementary out of the equation, and then also Spring Valley too, correct?
No, I think you would still do the Spring Valley, because you're gonna have to add capacity. Well, I guess you don't have to.
Why would you?
That's true.
It's part of the, is that not part of the M and, you know, we don't need that for M and O, so is that part of the equation that we would take out of the
You could.
bond package also?
The board could say, the board could basically say, do nothing that deals with expansion. And deal only with basically facility upgrades. And what that would be, and I'm kind of looking at Aubrey because I told her to be ready to do some quick math if we need it, but like, we've got 40 million in it for deferred maintenance, 25-year-old furniture, some lighting and flooring upgrades. And then there's the 6.7 million for buses. There's the 21 million for the high school work, PE gym and associated. There's the 2.6 million for fine arts. And that completely leaves,
Technology.
and then the 9 million for technology.
Don't leave technology. in.
Yeah, boy, Jesse will come over the table at me. And then that would leave out any notion of growth at all, right? Aubrey, am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, so if you take out, both Spiegelville and Spring Valley, you're
It's
looking
about
at an
85.
$84 million bond.
Say it one more time.
So the 175 million minus the 91 million for New Spiegelville and addition to Spring Valley
And wasn't that still doing some things that's out of Boston? Even with that, right? No, that's not anything? Okay.
It's the deferred maintenance.
Okay.
But
I thought we
that's
had
it.
to do a few things just for the Speakerville kids to fit somewhere. No?
So there is 3.5 million that you could,
Okay.
that is still part of that 84 million to gain some utilization,
Right,
reconfiguring some spaces inside that campus to get rid of.
right.
But that's not gonna get us 280 kids.
No,
Right.
No,
no.
but not in one school.
I think something else we can't really quantify, but I gotta believe it's true. If we close Speakerville and redistribute those students, you're gonna lose a lot of those students. They're gonna choose Crawford or McGregor at that point.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I wanted to speak to, if I may. Because in essence, we have three potential decisions for Speakerville Elementary. We can continue to operate it in a way that's not cost effective. We can close it and redistribute those kids, or we can close it and build a new elementary, a new Speakerville. So am I right? Those are our three options.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr.
That's- that's
Witt
been
and I had
discussed.
an opportunity back earlier this month that I wanted to share, and I've written something that I'd like to read, if I may. I wanted to take a moment to reflect on something that I experienced during the campus prayer walk earlier this month. Our very first walk started at Speakerville, our smallest and most remote campus, that by all practical measures is vulnerable in our current financial landscape. Its location, enrollment, and operational costs make it a likely candidate for closure. But what I saw that day served as a powerful reminder of something we all recognize: numbers never tell the whole story. This is a campus rich in identity and care. Its very walls speak life into children with statements like, "I am valued, I am a learner, I am a champion." The fairy lights strung across dry erase boards and handmade details in the library are more than decor. They're artifacts of creativity and commitment from a team who knows and loves their students deeply. Speakerville is not just a building, but a community, a family. And when we consider closing this campus, we're not just talking about facilities, we're talking about disruption at the most human level. Our decision will have not only budgetary impact, but emotional, relational, and spiritual consequence. I understand we must make hard decisions and appreciate that our administration, this board, and the challenges we all face. Let us resolve to make our decisions with compassion, clarity, and an unwavering commitment to people. If Speakerville's future must change, let us not simply dissolve it. Let us be intentional to preserve the community that has been cultivated there, to transplant it with dignity, not dismantle it without care. Because leadership isn't just about fiscal responsibility, it's about honoring the stories we steward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so,
Yeah,
Just to make things more complex.
well, and let me just say, because she's right, she and I were both at that prayer walk, and it was, it was really interesting. We have an AP there now who was so excited to get back to Speakerville.
Yes.
Because it's Speakerville.
Yeah.
And so I think that students, families, staff at Speakerville, they're us, just like everyone else, just like the ones down Hewitt Drive and 84 and everywhere else. So I think I think sometimes about my kids that like to hold on to something when there may be something better for them that we can give them. And I think when I think about Speakerville and what I saw there, those staff and those students deserve a better facility than what they're in.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Agreed.
I think there's an argument to be made about how do we achieve that? How do we put them in a better environment to learn and to grow and treat them like we would any students anywhere else? But I don't know that the answer to that today is different than it is in May, but I do know that there's additional data that could help us figure out how to proceed with it potentially. But I want to make sure that anyone who sees this or is listening who's a Speakerville teacher, Speakerville parent, that those students matter, they're important, and whatever we do here today and whatever we do before May, will be taken with the idea of what's in the best interest of those students. Because I think they would agree, man, where they are now is not in the best long-term interest. So,
I agree.
yeah.
But
And I know this is kind of obvious, but I do think it may be worth noting why we're in this spot. That building's been inefficient for a long time.
Yeah.
This isn't new.
Mhm.
But there are two things worth noting. And one is that in 1819, that building had 300 children in it.
18,
2018, 2019.
Oh,
That-
I meant 18, 19.
No, sorry.
Been around a long time.
It's an old building.
Old building.
We're going back to history. Were they in tents when they were there?
They, hot belly stoves and wood. No, in
A water pump outside.
2018, 2019, it was 301
The wagon
children.
circle?
23, 24, 2023, 2024.
Thank you.
267, today 224. And so it is to your point, it's struggling, and I think people know that. But there has continued to be more and more and more pressure put on the M&O budgets of school districts the last several sessions.
Sure.
And I want y'all, please don't, I don't want to turn this into the blame game or whatever, but if we've had this problem for years, and it's now kind of at a cross in the road moment, one has, I think it's fair, it'd be fair for a parent in Speakerville to say, why? Why are we having this conversation now? This isn't new. This has always been a smallish campus. And it's been built in 1954 for a long time now. And I do think it's worth noting that there are school districts across the state of Texas having this exact same conversation about their facilities.
Yes.
And they're closing buildings because the commitment that we have for the students is not a commitment that is shared by all the decision makers that affect the mechanisms and the streams that we have to run schools. And it's not just a matter of dollars and cents. It's not. It never has been. And yet there are those who have powerful decision-making authority who have tried to reduce it to nothing more than that. And so it has put us, and when I say us, I mean the district, in the unfortunate position of trying to struggle through this. And I think out of fairness to this board, someone has to mention the fact, no one asked for this. You know, no one asked for us to have to cross this bridge, but we're here.
Further discussion, folks.
That is a fair point. I think that's worth reemphasizing. In certain, to some part, we're here because we have facilities that have aged.
Yes.
And to some part, we're here because our district has grown. But there's a significant piece of, we're here having to deal with things that we would not have to deal with if we had been judiciously and fairly funded the way we should have been for the last decade.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And let me be clear, when I talk about closing Spiegelville and not reopening a new one in its place, knowing full well what you're talking about, my biggest concern is, like I mentioned, the M&O budget. If we continue operating at a deficit in the M&O budget, Midway is not going to be Midway, like we've talked about in prior meetings, you know, special called or otherwise. So Spiegelville, if we were continue to operate it, and we continue operating at a negative M&O budget, Spiegelville Elementary, as it currently exists, won't exist in the future if we have to cut all these programs district-wide to able to have a balanced M&O budget. So it's, you know, it's kind of 6 one way, half a dozen the other. To me, it's like, I don't like the idea of it,
Right.
but I mean, we have to get relief for the reason of not being properly funded. We've got to pull some levers somewhere, and it sucks that Spiegelville is sort of that lever, and I don't want to put that on them, and it's not fair. But
Well, to that point, Mr. Green, I think the one thing I might add is the other bit of information that might be beneficial to the board that could develop throughout the course of the fall, that would develop throughout the course of the fall semester, is more direction from administration on what it is we do think we have to do to bring our budget in line.
yeah,
Because whether we close Spiegelville or not, we're still going to have to do other things.
for sure.
And if I were to bring the board some more information on what it is I think we need to do and see how far we were able to get in that effort, it might make that part of this conversation feel more comfortable.
And just, this is really in the form of a question, Dr. Allen, but following up on what you just said, gonna have to do things on the M&O budget side, and that is without regard to all the deferred maintenance, because if we don't
Yes.
pass a bond election, all that deferred maintenance is just gonna get deferred some more.
It's gonna get worse.
It's going to get
It's gonna get worse.
100%.
Yeah.
I think I mean, pardon my boldness here for a minute, but I think it's unquestioned that we have a deferred maintenance issue that we have to deal with in a bond program. Whether that's now, May, from my perspective, that's not too big a deal, because all we're gonna end up doing is hitting fund balance, which we are over 25% on. Like, we have some fund balance cushion, okay? We'll pay ourselves back, and we'd be fine on that front. But we've got to deal with our deferred maintenance, and we've got to deal with these buses, and we've got to deal with the tech center. Like, that kind of has to happen, one way or the other, or we're gonna have a much bigger M&O problem than we currently have. I think that the most difficult part of all of this that we're all struggling with is how does the Spiegelville conversation then map to the long-term M&O situation moving forward? And that's why I couldn't help but circle back around to the fact that we're in this hole, because we've been underfunded for a long time, and it's just, we're now kind of stuck in this pickle where we have to figure out what the best strategy moving forward is. And when we are in the fortunate position of having some fund balance to give us some time to think if we want, and in the fortunate position of knowing that over time we will grow. I don't know when. Like, if there's a scenario where you could contemplate closing Spiegelville, adding capacity to all of our other campuses. If you did that, a la one of the versions of the plan that the committee looked at, that would give us 500 students worth of additional elementary capacity. At a ratio of about 0.5 kids per house, y'all, that's 1,000 new houses that have elementary age kids in them before we're at capacity again. And so that all of that needs to be contemplated. And I think you're right, Mr. Tullis. I think that if we were to close Spiegelville Elementary until growth were to occur in such a way that we needed to build a full building, I do think we'd lose kids up there. And I think that also has to be contemplated, because that also has an M&O impact. And so you have to ask yourself, is the M&O savings worth what you're going to lose on enrollment?
So does anybody want to continue discussion, or is anybody ready to move to making a motion or kicking the can down the road and us taking this back up in January for a May election? What's the board's pleasure here, folks?
Just to clarify from a procedural standpoint, the process of deciding to pause effectively means no one makes a motion and we adjourn, right?
Well, or somebody makes a motion and it dies for lack of a second, Colin, or a motion is made and duly
Right.
seconded and doesn't pass.
Got it.
All three of those mean we're taking no action.
Taking no action, right.
Yeah.
And to clarify, the options before us are to call for the full bond now that includes building for growth, call for a partial bond now that deals with the deferred maintenance and address the growth issue in May, or calling for the entire bond in May and pushing off some of that deferred maintenance even farther.
I don't disagree that those are options, Pam, but those are not the only ones. I think it's all on the table. It's up to this board. We can, our math whiz, she's more than that, y'all know that.
Those are the ones I've heard, and if there's
Right.
others, then if you will clarify that for me, that would be great.
Well, I mean, I think that part and parcel of what we're dealing with here is we could call for the facility's recommendation straight up. We could call for everything the facility recommended, but instead of building a new elementary, we go the other route, so that could happen. We could take out some parts of the facility recommendation, including carving it all the way down to the 84 million. We can do any or all of those things here today. That's up to the board. We could take no action here today and take everything back up in January. I don't know what the deadline is for a May election, whatever it is, sometime before then, but yeah. And then again, everything would be on the table then too.
I guess that there's a position that I've not made as clear as I would like. Because I recognize that other districts are in the same position. I recognize that other districts have to close schools. I recognize that there's some really hard human cost decisions that have to be made. But I want to stand firm on what I think sets Midway apart and makes us special. and I try to be very professional in the language I just used, but the analogy that came in my head when I was considering the options for Spiegelville is, I don't want to redistribute these kids like a basket of puppies, spreading them all over the district and dismantling that community. I will serve at the pleasure of this board, but that option is extremely unpalatable because of the things that we saw in that building and what it means to those people. It's like fostering kids out in multiple homes because you can't fit them all in one spot. There's a human price to that, and I do not like that option.
Well, and I'll say, I wouldn't vote for that option today. I think if we were gonna go that route, I think we need more conversation about what we're doing and why and how it fits the long-term plan.
That's a reasonable point.
I don't know that it's a hard and fast never, but I think it's today. I don't think that option makes the most sense. I think the committee, Facility Study Committee agreed, it was close, but they agreed that that doesn't make the most sense today. So, yeah. Not that anyone's made a motion for that. So.
$175.2 million minus how much?
91.
91, she said.
Minus how much?
91.
And it kind of brings it down to 84 exactly.
84 and 3.
Not exactly.
What's the decimal point? Decimal point and
83.8.
So are we prepared then to call for a bond of that size in November, knowing that we would probably task ourselves with potentially passing another one in May or the following November to address the elementary situation one way or the other?
You're probably a year out.
Yeah, it's probably a
I don't
next
think you would.
November.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Aubrey, did you say that included doing away with the portables at South Bosque? I asked you that question.
That is still included.
Okay.
The only thing removed is the new Spiegelville and Spring Valley.
Okay, right,
And
so,
let me correct myself, it's 83.5.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that we made sure South Bosque's changes was still in there.
And nothing, if we,
It would not increase the capacity of South Bosque, but it would just them within the building instead of.
Right,
to
exactly, do away with the
remove the
portables. Yes, that's it.
If we keep asking you, will it keep coming down?
potentially, we don't have to postpone that piece of it till May. Could we postpone it till next November of 2026?
That's what Mr. Tullis just said.
yeah. I mean, I think Rick's probably right. I think
Be
that
too soon to do it.
if the board takes action today to call a bond election for 83.5 million, that while in theory, we could turn around and call another one for the May uniform election date, I don't know that the board does that. Obviously, the board still could, and we could see what the lay of the land is between now and then. More likely, we're back in August of 26, looking at calling something for that November uniform election date of 26.
So if I had a whiteboard and I was drawing kind of a risk or matrix here of priorities versus things going on, M&O is now, it's gonna continue to be, it's been a problem, it's gonna continue to be a problem. Nothing's gonna change drastically at the state level. We're gonna have to find our own way to get better. And that's what part of this bond does.
Yeah.
The other side of the matrix, we're talking about the growth issue. And for whatever reason, our growth has slowed. I mean, a couple years ago, we were looking at projections of 2 to 4% a year, right? I mean, it was gangbusters. It's slowed to, we're stalled. We're stalled, basically.
Yes, sir.
The scary part is we can look around the district and there are still thousands of lots that are potentially going to be built on. And so I think we can't totally dismiss that. It's not accurate to say that, oh, we've tapped out, Midway's not going to grow anymore. It's going to grow again.
I agree.
And whatever reason it's slowed, which we need to spend a little more time understanding, it's going to the potential there is still really high. So to me, even though I like getting things done, it seems prudent. We can wait here just a little bit longer, I think. When I say here on the growth side, we gotta help you with M&O. Otherwise, we're gonna keep finding ourselves every year back looking at deficit budgets, and that's gonna start leading to other decisions we don't like. So I think as we weigh all this, I see the wisdom in us addressing the M&O side now, waiting, and it's probably not next spring, it's next year, would probably be the earliest time you can come back around. But, you know, if, for those of us who are sitting in these chairs next year, you'll have new enrollment data, you'll have some stuff going. We'll probably, you know, the economics, economic growth in McLennan counties, you're gonna have more data there, you're gonna see what's happening there. Some of these developments that are on the drawing board are gonna start moving dirt. I mean, and that'll be easier to explain to voters as well, right? We've got to, whatever we're doing here, we've got to be able to explain to voters. In the M&O side, I think we can explain pretty, not easily, because it's so convoluted.
Right.
But as far as priority, we can say, it is here, it is now, we got to get it done.
Even in this, and I know what you mean, Mr. Tullis, but even in this conversation, I'm looking out the room, and I think we have to make it clear, we're not talking about a bond program that would generate M&O money. It's a bond program that would generate INS money, so I wouldn't have to use M&O money on the problems we have because of our deferred maintenance.
Right.
And even that is hard to.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, and it would generate savings. I mean, the LED lighting alone would start to generate.
Correct.
There's some things where it
There's some
generates
things we could do using
savings as well.
INS dollars
Right.
that creates M&O
Yeah.
offset because of like energy efficiency.
Well, and also, just so, again, speaking to the audience,
Yes.
separately than the deferred maintenance, because of where we are and talking about, you know, a budget that we've adopted as a board that 3 whatever million deficit, and we're, you know, looking to you, and you already have been actively looking at ways to not have that, when it's all done, that deficit be that much. And what that then means is if we don't call a bond election now or May, then the things that we've talked about for fine arts and for technology and buses and those things, we don't have money for those either. So it's not just deferred maintenance, it's
Correct.
those pieces too, because we don't have the M&O dollars to spend, and we, under the current state of affairs, we can't hit the fund balance for
Not for
however
all
many
of that.
millions of dollars that is, right? Because right now, we're sitting on a fund balance, Wesley, it's 25% of our budget, but in millions of dollars, that's what, about 27, 28 million?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take, even I can do the math on how quickly we deplete that if we're hitting it for $3 to $4 million a year.
And how much of our budget goes to personnel salary?
Around 85%.
Okay. And with the raises they got this year, that's going to maintain and continue to grow in the future that we have to cover.
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Again, I'm not trying to be slippery, but because the state created that pass-through for teacher retention allotment, you can almost think of that as its own separate fund. But what I will tell you is the percent we're spending on personnel is increasing because they did not match that on the benefit side at all.
Right.
And they didn't put in nearly enough money to deal with compensation increases for our non-teachers.
Right.
And so, yes, the percent we're spending on personnel is creeping up a little bit every
Right.
year.
Yeah.
Right.
What,
It seems reasonable to determine to spend now the money on things we already know we need now, and that will save us money down the line as well. Is that a fair statement? Okay.
so the 83.5 million, if we went that route, is it still 3 bond proposals? Is 3
You would
props?
still have the lighting at the athletic facilities as a separate prop.
And the
you-
seating at the PAC is a
Yes.
separate prop? Oh, the technology is the other one, that's
Yeah.
right. The
It's
PAC's part of the middle school, that's right.
tech, so when we say tech, that's iPads and classroom teacher devices, and then lighting at athletic facilities,
And then everything else.
and then everything else.
Okay.
And then we're also talking about doing another future bond. Didn't you say the legislature's thinking about making us all do our bonds in November?
Yes, ma'am,
So then we would have to wait till next November if they,
if that were to pass.
Potentially.
They kinda got enough on their plate right now, though,
You think
maybe that
so?
won't come up.
To
All right.
Mr. Witt's point, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was simply gonna say, I move the board approve an order calling a bond election for November 4th, 2025 for 83.5 million.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand the motion? Further discussion on the motion? Questions? Comments?
like we said, it's prudent to adjust, to, work on, I can't think of the word, work on our current money issues, and this does do that with maintenance and repairs.
Do you think taking the growth aspect out of it helps or not with the voters? Like, is that gonna make it a more positive bond for us to pass easier? Does it make it harder to pass?
I think it makes it
Taking that out?
somewhat easier, Brad, but and again, I'm not the political expert, but I think when we could tell them honestly, we could call it for 175 million and not increase the INS tax rate. They know that we're telling them the truth on that, and they would approve that. I think they would, and so I would hope that if this board approves this motion, that they would, in that same vein, when we tell them, no, we're not gonna increase your INS rate to do that, right? That's, if you pay more in taxes, it's only gonna be because the value of your property goes up, not because our INS tax rate's going up, because it won't.
And the only other part of this that bothers me a little bit is we've already lost, what, 15 million of our bond capacity because of, is that right or not?
Yes, that's right. But just based on our preliminary values to certified, it went from the 192 to the 175.
So what if that trend continues and now we can't?
Well, I had that concern initially, but hearing Wesley talk about it and looking more at it on my own, the lion's share of that is because of the increase in the homestead extension. Because if you look at our red line on that chart for the commercial stuff, it's going up, and remember, graphic packaging is only on the rolls at 266 million right now. It'll be on there for the full meal deal for next year.
And electrolyte's not on there
And
either.
thank you, Mr. Tells, and electrolyte's not on there either, so I think we're going to, I'm not gonna say that we're gonna see a 10 or 11 or 12% increase, but I think rather than have a 4% decrease, I think we'll have a 3, 4, 5% increase for next year, is what I expect to see happen. Just looking at those industrial properties coming on, even if nothing else changed, I think that gets us there.
Which means if we postpone do part of this later, we might be in an even stronger financial position than we are today.
Oh, I hope we are, Pam. I would expect that we would be.
And hopefully offset some of the potential for increased cost, you know, as we know that the cost of things tend to go up down the road. I wanted to say, I didn't second the motion because we don't appreciate the work that the Facility Study Committee did. That's not at all the message that I think we're trying to send. And I'm looking right at Jordan saying this too. Tremendous respect for all the work that you guys did, and I think that we may actually land in the same place where you said we should land. I think we may just get there in 2 steps instead of 1. And I think that if the conversation with voters says, hey, this is step 1, we want to continue to engage conversation and make sure we're doing the right thing for growth and for our elementary kids down the road, that this is not, you know, one and done. We're still engaging in this conversation, and we know there's an issue that we still need to fix. So I think that will help us with voters as well. So
Certainly
thank
not
you.
the fault of the Facility Study Committee that the
Right.
crystal ball got so much
Right.
cloudier between when you finished and when we're making this decision.
Yeah.
And
And
I
I think
appreciate
to
it.
echo Colin's comments, you know, and to answer Brad's question, I would like to think the voters would appreciate the fact that the board isn't just, again, this is not negative to Jordan, not just rubber stamping the facilities committee recommendation without being more thoughtful in our process to say, hey, look, we're only doing 83.5 because that's what we feel today is the right answer without just going ahead and doing it all and doing it in 2 steps. And so to me, that says, hey, we're not just spending money to spend money or not increasing a bond just to do it. So I would like to think the voters would appreciate the fact that we're not just, yeah, we're just gonna do it all. We're doing all 175. I don't wanna say willy-nilly, but, you know,
Right.
we're being thoughtful about it. So I think that could only help.
It'll be great because our friends in the media will do a great job explaining that for us, I hope, and showing our wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, in that same vein of y'all's comments, let me just also be clear. The last thing I expected that would be happening today would be a motion and a second to call a bond at that amount. I fully expected, because y'all know, I mean, I was not an official part of the committee, but I went to every one of those meetings. I restudied and relearned all the things the committee heard, and I fully expected, because at that point, when you looked at where we were on what our projected bonding capacity was gonna be, we were gonna be 15 million below that. When you looked at what our demographics were, and you looked at all those things, I thought that we would be doing something down that path. And things have changed, and including a whole lot of what the legislature, you know, has done, still to be determined. I mean, and when I say done, I'm talking about House Bill 2 and the teacher retention and all the things that they parse the money out to, as opposed to increasing the basic allotment. So me making that motion was not because I thought the facility committee got it wrong. They didn't. I think they got it right, but I think the facts have changed. And in my mind, to a significant enough degree to support, and that's why I made the motion. So,
And we want all the kids to be in buildings and classrooms that are up to date, current, safe, and well-maintained. So that's why we need to go ahead and do the money now to keep our midway facilities at the top, so they can
Well,
be.
the needs we have today are a priority, and deciding wisely for what we need in the future is also a priority, and we need time to get more information on that end, while at the same time taking care of our kids in the buildings right now.
all right, y'all ready for the question? Anybody got anything else to say?
But we do the bond in November. If it passes, when does it actually fund? What's the timing of that?
We'll get the funds in February.
Okay.
All right, y'all heard what the motion is, everybody understand what the motion is? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Like all our meetings end, when you're out of agenda items, we're adjourned.
Thank you. I got some
Got
stuff
there.
here to sign. Hey, thank y'all. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's difficult. Pam, I'm sure I've got stuff here to sign. Maybe you too, Ms. Bailey.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm not
maybe.
leaving.
We've got election orders, but this is gonna happen.
I'm not leaving, man. Y'all need to sign. Oh, I'm vice president.
So this right here